Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here, welcoming you back to the channel as we continue to trawl through the violent depths of the fighting game ocean to bring you all the kind of scrap happy content you crave. We've covered many classics and historically significant fighting games on here in the past, while also shedding a light on some of the more obscure, overlooked or just downright strange titles as well. Today is going to be the pilot episode in a potential brand new sub-series about the weirdest fighting games known to man, where we attempt to do just that and educate you lucky viewers on some of the least known and strangest examples of the genre around. In this maiden episode we're going to take a deep dive look at a Japanese exclusive arcade game that the majority of Western audiences don't even know exists, despite its popularity on the circuit and its occasional use in legit fighting game tournaments. That's right folks, today we are going to be pulling out our Google Translate apps and exploring the wild, colourful and zany world of Daemon Bride, one of the quirkiest Japanese arcade fighters out there. Is it worth remembering, or is it just another oddball title that would be best left in the dustbin of history? Well, let's have a look and find out. Yeah! Founded in March of 1999, Examu Inc. were one of the leading developers and producers of both arcade and home console versions of fighting games in Japan. Previously known as Yuki Enterprise, the Tokyo-based Kabushiki Gaishu company took a while to really get going, as it took them a few years to actually get anything out there, and their earliest efforts were met with such muted responses that no one really noticed them. Continuing SNK's long-running popular weapons-based fighting franchise, their first officially released game was Samurai Shodown V, developed for the Neo Geo AES and MVS. This one, that was released in 2003, was disappointingly met with extremely middling reviews from critics. This was followed up the next year with Samurai Shodown V Special, which improved on the formula laid out in the previous game, but still failed to really captivate audiences or reviewers of the time. Interestingly, Samurai Shodown V Special was the last officially released Neo Geo game ever, so it does actually hold quite a lot of historical significance. But nobody knew that at the time, and Yuki Enterprises wouldn't really make their mark on the world until the release of their follow-up 2006's Arcana Heart to arcades and the PlayStation 2 in Japan. Hype in the fighting game community for this entirely new IP was real, and although it received no releases and barely any support outside of Japan until it finally came over to American shores in 2008, it had still managed to become one of the most sought after and highly regarded titles internationally, on the strength of word of mouth and the blossoming import scene alone. Arcana Heart quickly became a favourite amongst fighting game tournament organisers and featured in several well-regarded prominent ones, with both the original and many of its sequels still being staples to this day. The popularity of the hand-drawn sprites, the colourful characters and frantic combo-based gameplay meant that Arcana Heart was destined to become a fully fledged franchise of its own, and in doing so would pretty much ensure the continued sustainability of Yuki Enterprise, at least for the time being. Several sequels and sequel iterations were released over the coming years for various arcade boards and multiple home consoles and handhelds, to the point that Yuki, and later Examu, were almost exclusively thought of as the Arcana devs. This is what led to them going all out and actually changing the name of the studio officially to Team Arcana in 2019. This rebranded name alteration can be traced back to the previous year when it was used in Arc System Works and BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle for arcades, PS4, Nintendo Switch and Windows. This excellent and highly recommended game features several characters from various fighting universes, such as Persona 4 Arena, Under Night in Birth, and RWBY crossing over into the BlazBlue universe for a good bit of argy-bargy. Several Arcana Heart characters were later added in as additional downloadable content, with Examu adopting the placeholder Team Arcana name at that point. Back to the story at hand, and now that Examu Inc's team of devs were not only very well established, but also highly respected within the fighting game community, it was time for them to try their hands at coming up with another entirely new IP for a franchise, in hopes of replicating their Arcana Heart success. Featuring absolutely gorgeous hand-drawn sprites, bombastic heart-pounding orchestral heavy metal music, and Examu's trademark tournament fighter gameplay, Daemon Bride was let loose on Japanese arcades on the 16th of July 2009 to solid reviews but fairly limited fanfare. It featured a roster of strangely dressed and frankly very poorly behaved high school students that all have access to their own angel or demon to aid them in pulling off ridiculously absurd fighting game maneuvers, with all the angels and demons being the opposite gender of their respective human chums. The school that all of these young misfits attend is called Kairitsu Stella, and it is extremely noteworthy in that its students supposedly receive contracts from higher beings to reshape the world they reside in that has been left in ruins. Those who receive a contract of an angel wish to save the world, whereas those that receive a contract of a demon want to use their powers for personal gain. All sounds like pretty reasonable standard high school behaviour, right? This demonic angelic split has created quite a bit of tension within the school community, as one might imagine. This tension is the backdrop or possibly just the narrative device that facilitates all the one-on-one fighting that's going on. The two main protagonist and antagonist characters are Kuon Sumeragi and his angel helper Michael for the babyface side, and RyeANDRinGaming and his demon chum Lucifer representing the heels. However, there is a whole host of zany, bizarre, and often worryingly sexually provocative characters to choose from here. There are definitely some JoJo's Bizarre Adventure vibes going on with some of the gameplay and character choices, and Daemon Bride has a similarly trippy feel to it. Far out, man, far out indeed. Both the Attract intro animation and the in-game animations are phenomenal, with the sprites being complemented wonderfully by the vibrant and highly detailed backgrounds in the various stages, which range from ravaged city streets to golden temples to aircraft hangars and sky temples. As nice as some of these stages look, there is little to no background animation in any of them, so things can seem a bit stagnant at times, particularly when compared to other, more popular, higher budget fighting games, but the stunning character animation mostly makes up for that. Aside from a lack of fancy stage animations, visually it is somewhat reminiscent of King of Fighters 13, and that's obviously no bad thing. Gameplay is fast, fluid, and special move heavy, with a lot of options for juggling and air combos. Most of the 14 selectable characters on offer are so mobile, you'll find the action often makes full use of the entire play area, which gives things a frantic feel and can almost seem a bit Smash Brothers-esque at times. Truth be told, some of those characters do feel a little floaty, but you'll notice that this is actually balanced quite well, when contrasted with being forced to avoid the game's larger, screen-filling attacks and projectiles. Controls are tight and responsive and mostly adhere to your traditional fighting game input formula, with 4 face buttons used for attacks. Daemon Bride also features your standard special meter, which allows you to perform EX special moves and super specials, as well as a stamina bar that restricts certain dashing movements. Located at the top of the screen near your energy bar is a special heart meter that can be filled up to 3 times and will power up certain attacks, almost like powering up a weapon in an arcade shooter. Although still something of a niche title, even in its native Japan, Daemon Bride was popular and in demand enough within the fighting game community for an updated version to be released. This came in the form of Daemon Bride Additional Game, which was developed for the Taito Type X2 arcade board, but was actually released on the highly innovative but also rather confusing Nessie Cax Live system, which was essentially its own dedicated arcade board that was combined with a self-contained router to both access and download games, similar in a lot of ways to Sega's All.NET game distribution system. Originally developed by Taito and released worldwide in 2010, the ambitious Nessie Cax Live was adopted by several big hitters within the arcade industry, particularly those with a strong fighting game or shooter pedigree, such as SNK, Cave, Arc System Works, and of course our pals over at Examu. The system can function with all the Taito Type X2, X0, X3 and X4 boards, and allowed for much cheaper, quicker and easier access to new games without the need for arcade operators to either purchase new boards or dispose of old ones. Convenient, frugal and environmentally friendly. Daemon Bride additional game was released on November 24th, 2011, once again exclusively to Japanese arcades, and fixed various balancing issues from the original game, added a sidebar just like the one found in Examu's beloved Arcana Heart 3, and added a secret bonus character called Pure. Although knowing my luck with Japanese names is probably pronounced Puree or something. Although both the OG Daemon Bride and its updated version had their fair share of fans within the little bubble known as the fighting game community, with additional game even making its way to some lesser known fighting game tournaments, unfortunately neither of them were apparently successful enough to warrant any kind of official home release whatsoever. Shame, as I think the PS3 would have been an ideal place for a home for Daemon Bride's release, and I'm sure it could run like a dream on that particular hardware. Given Examu's strong relationship with Sony around this time, it is possibly slightly surprising that there was no port, particularly after the great success of Arcana Heart 3. Nevertheless, it wasn't to be, but fans of slightly odd, super Japanese, somewhat anime-inspired fighting games that don't have access to the Japan-exclusive arcade cabinet need not despair just yet. Thanks to a hack discovered in 2016 by some rather clever and rather considerate boffins over in America, it's now possible to play any of the Nessie Cat's live titles via a PC in the comfort of your own home. This means that Daemon Bride's obscure little legacy can continue, as well as a whole host of other tremendous arcade games from that era that would otherwise be lost to time. Tremendous stuff. Although there is a rather complicated setup to get the hack up and running on your PC, it's even possible to have competitive netplay when using the screen share application Parsec, so it's worth making the effort if these types of games are your thing. Unfortunately, it's only the basic arcade options that are available, so no training modes or combo challenges or anything fancy like that. But to be honest, it's just pretty amazing that this thing exists at all, so beggars can't be choosers. Although it may be a bit out there for Western tastes, and it does have its flaws, such as a lack of originality and a little bit of a lack of gameplay variety with the various characters, but I think Daemon Bride is well worth tracking down, particularly for fighting game enthusiasts. It has a great 2-player mode, decent character balance and really enjoyable gameplay mechanics. And that's without even mentioning the 10 out of 10 soundtrack and in-game animations. There has been a lot of similar games that have done this type of thing way better over the years, but that's not taken away from what Daemon Bride does well. It may not replace BlazBlue, Guilty Gear or Skullgirls as your new favourite quirky fighter, but if you have even a passing interest in any of those games, it will certainly give you some solid enjoyment and entertainment. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Daemon Bride. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of today's video and which weird fighting game that you would like me to cover on here next. Feel free to throw me a freaking bone here. If you are new here, I have already made countless videos covering fighting game history, so I will pin my fighting game playlist for you to click through in my comments. Videos like this are in part made possible due to the generous people who fund this small channel through Patreon. Speaking of whom, special thank yous go out to Ben Harradine, Carl Johnson, Heo Paula Lopez, Johnny Holly, Corey I. Marsh Sr., Ron Dinched, Evan Boulder, Azure Archive, Ego, Jordan Duran, Ian Boyle, Nick Daniels, Princess Zana, Computer Man, House of a Ted, Matthew Langtree, Matt Fowl, Steve, Justin Wang, Hermes Gonzalez, Man Shovel, Sankey, Langston Miller, Flaming Renee, TOG Driver, Louis Fiant, John Bates, David Bowell, Antonio Rodriguez, Synth Spaces, Punk Toast, and everybody else who backs my work on the Patreon platform. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you. Cheerio.